Yesterday you were walking around a little bit. What do you think of being back at the Air Force Museum? Tell me about your experience and what you saw and what goes through your mind.
Well, walking around here is sort of like a trip down memory lane, in that seeing a lot of these aircraft that I flew or I flew in. In fact, it just really memories when I look at this B-36 here. On Okinawa, we would make practice passes on B-29s. And the 29 would be down there and we'd make our pass on. And then one time a wing or a squadron of B-36s came in from Washington, and they authorized us to make passes on that thing. And you're looking at a certain size, huh? But this B-36 was so big that when we'd make our pass, I'd be breaking off way too soon. Another interesting thing about that, most of them had a prop engine or two feathered. Those engines were not that good. And then they parked these things right in front of our ops. So our 86s were sitting, or 94s, were sitting right under the wing. So we had to park. They just about took over our area, but we were small enough to park under them. And this one taxied in right in front of us, right in front of our ops building. And a door opened, and these guys climbed down a ladder underneath the front gear. And after a few minutes, one of them went back up and came down, and here they were on an airbase, an active airbase, drinking the beers. And we thought, my goodness, what happened to SAC anyway? But anyway, that was interesting with these.
And sometimes they would have two full crews aboard.
Oh,
to do the
for hours and hours and
Yeah.
hours. Oh, yeah.
They could do up like 40-hour missions. And stuff.
Yeah, they flew nonstop from Washington State, someplace there, all the way there. Oh, but I see in '89, that's brings back memories too, having flown it. That was a nice bird, nice.
Can you take me way back to what inspired you to fly? Was it World War II, what you saw, because you joined after World War II? What was it that inspired you to join the Air Force?
Well, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to fly. An airplane would go over and I would gaze longingly at it. But when I graduated from college in '49, and the Korean War was just started, this was my opportunity. I hoped, I thought, I wished it would be my chance to fly. So I volunteered, enlisted in the Air Force pilot training. And that was my start. So.
Do you remember your training class and what was that like?
Well, my training class was 52 able, the first one in '52. So I started in January of '51.
So you were in flight school during wartime. What was that mentality from your instructors? I mean, they were prepping you for war.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, what was that like, the mentality of the instructors? They probably amped up the seriousness of what you're about to do.
Well, most of our instructors were those who had served overseas and did have experience. So that lended a degree of credibility to what they said. There's one thing that his name was, the instructor was Lieutenant Alter. And he was, we were doing some instrument flying in this T6. You got a shade over your head so you can't see out there. And these little cilia in your inner ear can sense a motion of 3 degrees or more per second. So he said, put your head down and shut your eyes, and then he would crank it hard and hold it for a bit and then bring it back. And he says, okay, now, Faber, tell me, what way are we going? And I'd say, oh, we're going right. And he says, open your eyes and look. And we're going left. And he did that a couple times, and he says, Faber, if you don't remember a thing I ever told you, remember this. Believe your gauges and don't trust your ass. And, which is so true.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the instruments will get you out of it. If you
That's
trust
right,
them,
yeah.
Switch your shoulders again more to me.
Yeah.
Perfect. Just makes the shot cool. Excellent. So when you got out of pilot school, were you able to pick the jet, or you just assigned jets? And what was your assignment?
Well, after
pilot
basic training, we were given the choice of fighter or bomber. And I wanted fighter. And after a couple of weeks, they came and said, oops, sorry, all of the fighter classes are full in Luke. So you're going to have to go to bombers. Oh, rats. So I went to Oklahoma and was flying B-25s until about 5 weeks or so before I graduated, got my wings. They says, oops, we've got room for some fighter pilots. And boy, I had both hands up. So we were in Vance, Oklahoma, and about 50 miles west there was the Cimarron River. And they said, take your T6, take your flight, go over there, and on the other side of the Cimarron, and we called it the Yalu, you can do all the dog fighting you want to. And boy, did we have fun. After getting out of these B-25, and standard rate turn and all the rest of that stuff, we had a lot of fun.
That's great. And so from there, after Vance and doing that, where did you end up?
Then I went into Georgia for instrument training and spent hours and hours and hours under the hood flying instruments. And then after that, to Tyndall in Florida for the Intercept school. So that when I was finished that, I was fully qualified for fighter interceptor all weather. No matter what the weather was, we were quite confident in our ability to fly anything. So, yeah.
That's great. And then, so did you end up flying in Korea at all? Or you went to Masao?
Well, from there I went to Payne, just north of Seattle, and flew the 89s there. And then thereafter, then it went overseas to Okinawa, and I spent about 3 years there. So, yeah.
Can you talk about any of the missions that you flew out of there?
Most of our flights were intercepting B-29s coming back from their Korea run. They might not be where they were supposed to be, so we'd get scrambled up to intercept them. And you'd come up behind here and scooter up right underneath that wing and count the ports. 1, 2, 3, no, this is 4 engines, and try to identify the bird itself. Some frustrating times there where you've got your don't have the navigation lights on, turn the cockpit lights way down, but if there's an alert waist gunner, he'll see this light glow of my canopy. And they've got an Aldous lamp, about 1 million power, I don't know what it is, that they use to scan the wing. Are there any oil leaks? Well, and if he aims that right smack dab at me down there, you know, my pupils are this big, and I'm blinded. So immediately you drop and move away to try to get your vision back. That used to be very irritating, and mostly so when you're scrambling after a Navy P2V coming back from the Formosan Straits, and these guys are flying at 1,000 feet or whatever. Well, you don't have too much room, and you go scooting under it, and one of these guys puts a light on you. You don't want to go down very far, or you're in the water. That used to be very, very irritating.
So you would kind of help them get back to the base?
Well, identifying who this is.
Would they also land at Okinawa?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were based there. Yeah. Yeah.
And what plane were you flying there in Okinawa then? What one?
First was flying the F-94. I haven't seen the 94 around here, but you probably got.
Okay. Yeah. You'll see it.
Yeah. And then the 89, and then the 86. And we were flying the 89s at the time when they were losing wings. There was some bad situation in the root of the wing there. And well, first they lost one over Detroit for an air show. And then out in Maine somewhere. And then we lost one. And about that time they grounded them. But that was a nice flying airplane. Good and steady, big wing tips, fuel tanks on the end of the wings, and a super air conditioning heating unit. That trombone there, why? When you go down fast, you can fog up in a hurry. Oh, it fogs in there. But with that thing, boy, you could get heat in there and the fog would disappear. Whereas in the T-33 or the F-94, they had, we called it a little pneumonia tube, come up right behind the seat, and they had a fan shape there. And oh man, that was cold. And when you turned it down, you could get snowballs flying at your head. That was not so nice. But.
That's awesome. What were some of the control differences and flight characteristic differences between those three planes? Were they all kind of similar as far as
very
what
similar.
you could do?
Very similar, yeah.
They could dive good, they could climb, rate of climb good and all that?
Well, the 86 obviously had the most power, and in Intercept we'd be in burner all the time until we got up there. And we'd be climbing at 0.7 Mach, 0.75 Mach, which is, until that time, it was all airspeed. Now, you're flying by the Mach meter. Wow, that was quite a change, but, yeah.
So you were basically on alert if anybody came into the airspace, and then, in case the base is under attack.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that and what was it like to be, scrambled when you're on alert?
Yeah, there was a day fighter squadron and ours, all weathers. If it was CAVU, clear, the day guys had it. But only during the day. When it came to night or weather, we had it. So most of the time we had it, sure.
How many in your group or squad then?
Oh, we probably had 25 birds, something like that, yeah.
And would you stick to your particular one or whatever was ready?
Oh,
at the time?
no. We all had an airplane with a name on it and whatever. But you only flew those that were combat ready, CR. So it could be anything, any one of them. But they all flew exactly the same way. There was one thing that I had to learn to accept is that in the event, you're at night in weather or whatever, snuggling up under somebody. The one thing I had to finally accept was if there was going to be a incident, I'd be the first one, because I'm duck soup sliding right under this guy. He can nail me so fast that I won't have time to say Mayday. So
That's pretty fascinating. Yeah, so you had no idea any time it could be enemy.
anytime, any flight scramble could be the last one, and it takes a while to get adjusted to that, and then yeah, so be it. So be it.
You're pretty fortunate. Nobody came in, right? It was all friendlies.
Yeah. Well, one time I was scrambled out toward China. Got out to because there was a bogey coming in from China, and when they get scrambled, they tell you what altitude and heading, and they put me at 30,000 feet. Oh, that's not a B-29, and if it's coming from the west, well, it's got to be a real bogey. So as we got closer, at that time we were flying 94s, so I had a radar observer. And after a bit, he could pick this bird up ahead. And once he picked it up, he can transfer it to my radar. So I got, let's say 4 miles, 3 miles from him. And Chinese GCI told him to make a 180. And my GCI came back and says, okay, make a 180. So we're separating. And then their GCI told him to come back. And then my GCI told me to come back. And, at that time, it's dark. It's black over that ocean. And he's the only one I see, but are there any others around? You got your cockpit lights way down. And in as much as we were re-engaging, had the 94, had the cannons. So I charged them just in case, so that if I had to, I could shoot. Because earlier, a State Department guy came in. We had a meeting of all the pilots. And he gave us the rules of engagement. Anytime you can get one, go ahead. Only make sure he's dropping in the water, not over land. Oh, okay. Do we have to get permission to fire? No, if he fires, you're clear to. Any other time, ask permission. If that happens, you see that C-54 out there? It's the colonel's bird. When you come back, don't think about going back into ops. Just walk right over there. Don't worry about your shaving kit. Just walk over there. And the colonel and you and a couple others are going to be heading immediately to Tokyo to Far East Air Force for a briefing. Well, that was a nice thought. But those are just little few experiences.
Is there anything I'm missing there that you want to share about the time protecting the airfields in Okinawa and in time during the Korean War?
About the only, whatever happened with me was not unique. It happened to many others. But one night, there was weather moving in and I got scrambled. And it was probably scrambled in the northeast. And I intercepted this bird. But the weather was pretty heavy, and as I was coming back, it got heavier and heavier, and there was a thunderstorm, a big one. That was, Okinawa is not a big place. And we had just a weak little radio station, Jignan there, 15 watts, down-directional. And I'm always trying to know where I am relative to home plate. And as I'm coming back, this ADF needle was useless, pointing all over. Lightning, bamming away. And there's no alternative. You either land home or you're in the water. So as best I could figure it, coming back and about over where Well, let me interrupt. If I have to go in, I want to go in on the west side of the island, not the east side, so that predominantly will move me toward the island. And I was over about what I thought was Jignan. Periodically the needle would settle, but the rest of the time it's bappity-bapping around me and the rain is heavy. So I let down the slide and made my procedure turn and came back in. Again, down to 1,000 feet. And as I got down there about where I thought the island might begin, and then it turned north, and for 1:15 seconds should put me about the approach to Kadena. And as I was coming down, it got lower and lower and lower and lower, and I'd called tower and said, turn runway lights to full intensity. And I was down to 300-400 feet, thinking, oh, crap. This is going to be my last flight. And thankfully, there was a little break, and I saw a couple lights. So I cranked her across, and to make a long story short, landed. And I was so appreciative. The next day I went to the PX and I bought one of these anniversary clocks. You know, it's glass clock with a thing in it. That was God's gift to me for another day. That was the toughest part.
There was a MiG pilot that defected.
Oh yeah. Okay, right after he landed, our State Department, they claimed and China claimed that they didn't have any of these birds. So our State Department said, well, look, if it's yours, we'll give it back to you. But in the meantime, they wanted to test it. So they took the wings off it, stuck it in a 124 and flew it down to Okinawa at our base. And this wing is right in front of our ops. So I got to see No Kum Suk, which they gave an American name of Kin Suk, but he was always with an interpreter because he couldn't speak English, and they wanted to corral every bit of information they had from him. So that was an interesting time, and Chuck Yeager and General Kissinger flew from here over there to test that MiG. Yeah. And Chuck Yeager came into our ops after one flight. He says, I just about froze my balls, and that was so cold because it didn't have a heating and air conditioning system like we're used to, like we have. But that was interesting watching them testing that MiG. So yes, I'm interested in seeing that MiG. It was around here somewhere.
It's in the Korean War gallery,
Yeah,
so it's going to be the next building over.
Okay.
That's pretty neat, though.
Yeah.
So you got to see. I'm going to get a picture of you next to it because you got to see it when it was at Okinawa.
Yeah.
And now you get to see it here in the museum. That's a pretty special story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ken told us how he wanted to defect. He had no idea there was a $100,000 reward out for someone who did it. And he says in most of their flights, they were only missions, only given enough fuel to accomplish this mission. They didn't have maps, but one day in their ops, he saw a map, and oh, here's Seoul, and he confiscated that sucker, and he took it back to his barracks, and at night, with the blankets over his head, with his flashlight, studied this map. So he knew the hitting and about the time required to get there. And one day he got a mission that had enough fuel to do that. So when he took off, most of the other guys went, let's say, that away. He took off and stayed low. Says I kept it low so radar wouldn't pick him up for a while, but you can't stay low too long or you're going to use too much fuel. So he had to come up. But anyway, we got to Seoul, and he says he landed at the first airfield he saw, He landed downwind and had to really ride the brakes. And he pulled off, and opened the canopy, jumped out, stood there, and about that time a couple of jeeps of APs showed up. He says he thought sure he was going to get shot. Thought sure he was going to. But thankfully they took him in, and the rest is history.
So you got to talk with him?
Oh yes, oh yes. He sat in our ops at night a few times while we were on alert and saw. They had no idea that we had radar in birds, that we could find them in the weather or at night. They wondered, how can you shoot an airplane down if you can't see it? So he saw was there for some of our scrambles and when we come back.
Did he ever talk about the risk to his family, because his family would receive the repercussions of his defection?
No, he didn't, no. But he was always with the interpreter. Now, the interpreter may have said something that was more political than his response, and how would we know that, But always with an interpreter, always, and a mic, so it was recorded. Whatever he said and whatever transpired, because they didn't want to lose anything in the process.
Yeah, what was that like? Talking with him as the group and everything, like here's the guy that, is flying for the enemy, flown a lot of missions against our guys before he was able to defect.
Yeah.
What was that like, seeing somebody from, the other side of the war?
Yeah, as far as we were concerned, he was a fellow pilot, a fellow individual who was flying, whether he liked it or not, but was flying, which was something we were doing, and we had much in common. So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that goes back to chivalry from World War I.
Yeah, there wasn't animosity per an individual. No.
That's great. Great story. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And then after Okinawa, what did you end up doing after the Air Force? Why did you get out, and what did you do for your career after the Air Force?
Well, after I finally got out, I was a critical AFSC. And they finally let me out after about 5 years. And I went back in industry, and I was an accountant, treasurer, VP of finance. So a completely different life than the life. But I did do some flying thereafter, privately. But
yeah. St. Elmo's Fire?
Oh.
What comes to mind?
Yeah. They teach you that as you penetrate a moisture-laden cloud, you can run into St. Elmo's Fire. Yeah, well, so, okay. But it ain't real until it hits you. And I was going through one thunderstorm there one time, and all of a sudden that canopy was just a river of fire. Just a river of fire. The cockpit is bright because it's all lit. It shakes you the first time, but then they told me about that. St. Elmo's Fire. It's beautiful. Beautiful. In basic flying, teaching you to do various air maneuvers, one of which was a good barrel roll. And this one instructor was interesting. He says, "Hey, Faber, that was lousy." And he dug a quarter out and he set it out there in front of me. And he says, "Do it again, and I want to keep my quarter," meaning you better keep positive G's all the way around this thing. So when you come out, you can give me my quarter back. Well, that was a little incentive. If you didn't, you'd run upside down and wait for that quarter to fall back and reach to the canopy and recover it.
That's awesome. So, seeing this museum, we've got over 350 aircraft on display. You get to peek back into your history. You get to look back at Wright Brothers stuff. You get to see what our guys are doing now. Cool stuff like XB-70 from the 60s and 70s, all this great technology that came out of that. You get to see F-22. I mean, what would you give to fly in an F-22 today?
Oh, wow. Well, at my age, that wouldn't happen, but yes, the desire is still there, and I'd like to believe I could do it. But there are certain procedures you've got to go through before you break ground, and I wouldn't be qualified. But yes, the thought of, yeah, oh, good night, yes.
What would you say to a young child or a young person coming through here? They have no idea a lot of times what it takes, you know, all the training to fly, all the variables against it, like, you know, drag and all that, thrust, all the things against flight. We're just like, you know, just looking up and just trying to take it all in. What would you say to the youth, why it's important to have a place like this, and why it's important to serve in the military?
Why it's important to have a place like this?
Yeah, like a history museum.
Oh, for the kid that has an inclination, this would be the cherry on the top of the ice cream that says, this is what can be done, this is what was done, and we're riding on their shoulders. It's a great experience.
So you would recommend people come and see this history museum?
Oh yes, oh yes. Well, to me it's different than others, but to me it's walk down memory lane is see these different aircraft that, wow, I hadn't seen for many years. I'm 90 now, good gracious. I've just about forgotten all that stuff.
You're one of the young guys.
yeah, I was young then. Yeah.
Yeah, what was Thanksgiving dinner like?
Well, we went to the officers club, and yeah, he was around all the time for at least a week, but then sat in the club there. He was sitting there with his interpreter and walked in and sat with him. And of course, Thanksgiving did not have the significance that it does for us, but he thought it was a pretty nice thing. Yeah, we're eating well. Sure.
Yeah, those guys are starving.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
As opposed to what they always probably taught their pilots that if you about the Americans were bad, would torture you and do all this thing, and then we invite them to dinner with Thanksgiving, which is just so cool.
Well, he's a fellow individual with his own aspirations and whatever. So he's on that side. He ain't now, he's with us. So you honor him for that.
Yeah, super courageous.
Yeah. You did. He was worried he'd get shot down in the process of defecting. He had no idea that there was a reward out for that. He was very pleasantly surprised when he found that. In basic training, I didn't have him, but others in our group did, an instructor, Lieutenant Britton. And he had an aptitude of a long pre-flight briefing and a long post-flight briefing. And these guys were getting tired of this length of this briefing. Well, on Okinawa, by goodness, here's old Brit. He's flying a B-26, pulling a rag so that the ACAC gunners along there can fire at that. Well, we remembered old Briefing Brit. So we could see him flying back and forth there, and we could see when he was headed back to home plate. We'd wait until he's just about to hit the patterns to land, and then we'd call tower minimum fuel, meaning we got precedence, and he'd have to break off. After a bit, this happened a few times, he knew what was going on, and we'd see him in the club, and he really wasn't too happy with us. But we got even with Brief and Brett.
In
walk around and check
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah, make sure your pitot was clear.
Yep. And then you walk around to the back.
Yeah.
What would you check back here?
Yeah, you move this.
You move that.
But this is froze. so-
Right.
But is it free?
You
Is
make
it
it free. Yeah.
Is it?
Check to see if it's free. And
And do you see any streaks?
Right.
Meaning there may be leaks.
right, right. I see. Oh, see, this is why you can't move it. And you were looking like from the side to see if anything was dented or
Yeah.
whatever.
Make sure it's all smooth.
Yes.
There's no something on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You remember any incidents where you had to, Mr. Crew Chief?
Fix
What
this?
about this?
No, these guys are good.
Really good about
They're
it?
good. Yeah.
Chief. Okay. Okay.
The chief and another guy.
And you would get to know him quite well.
Well, you meet him as you come putzing out here to climb the ladder. These are vortex generators to smooth the airflow.
I see. Yes. Wow.
And then you check here. What are these guys? Vortex generators to straighten the airflow.
Okay. How about this?
That's the fuel vent bayonet, which when you take off, your tanks are all full, and you get to an altitude, and some of these tanks, they expand. And where can it go?
Out
Through
there.
here.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah, there were times we were making passes at a 29. We'd pull away and that thing went. And the 29 pilot would call and, hey, you're
leaking.
you're showing, you've got smoke coming.
Yeah.
It looked like
Sure.
smoke.
Sure.
Yeah.
You'd want that to be clear because otherwise build up too much pressure,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now inside here, the
Yeah,
turbine
well,
is in there.
Yeah,
Can you see it?
Yeah, you can see it back there, but your
Yeah.
eyelids, this would expand
Oh, okay.
because normally it's, let's say, this size,
Right.
but when you go in burner,
Yeah.
it's got to open up.
Yes.
So you check your eyelids.
I see. To make sure they're working
I,
correctly.
I took our flight surgeon up one time, and we were flying along, and I wanted to get some higher. There was a B-47 up there, so I went into burner, and oops! All of a sudden, over temp.
Yeah.
Got it back out. And I told him, well, we can't get up there because my eyelids won't open. And are you okay? Oh, you okay? He didn't realize I was talking about those.
That's great.
Little steps on the front here.
Yes.
Without the ladder, you the pods underneath there.
So there's no guns on board.
No, just the rockets.
Now is that because of the B or just this particular plane was
No,
only
all the D's, dogs,
Yeah.
had rockets.
one rocket?
And these slats were easy to slide out.
Were they?
Oh, very easy.
Okay.
Very easy. Because when you're taking off, the slats are down.
Right,
And as
right.
your speed increases, they just slide right on the
These are automatic.
These are automatic.
the air pressure.
Yeah. I see.
Air pressure.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And here's the steps. Here's one.
There's one and
There's another one. There should be one down here.
Yeah.
Well, that,
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah, if the crew chief wasn't around and you wanted to get up there, you could. He usually came out with a ladder, so you
Right.
could climb up there. Yeah, yeah.
And you say these ones didn't have guns and just the rockets?
Just the rockets. Just the rockets. Yeah.
And thankfully you didn't have to fire anything, right?
Yeah, we fired them a couple times, but only in practice. Yeah, one time there's an island, a little island off Okinawa, just a little one. And must be the Marines or somebody had used it to try to, in getting there. Anyway, there was a LSD landing craft, wreck sitting there. And they took the normal rockets out and gave us some special ones, and we went and fired at those
Did you get it?
LST.
Did you hit it?
Well, you fire 4 of them, and
Yeah.
if 2 of them hit, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's a pattern.
Yeah.
There's a pattern.
Amazing. How many rounds?
More than 24, maybe 36.
Is there?
We had a choice of firing 4, 8, 12, and 16, maybe 32. You selected how many you wanted to fire off at a time.
Could you fire all of them?
Oh, yes.
You could fire all at once.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. That'd make a pretty sight to see all
Okay.
those things
Yeah.
scooting on into it.
Yeah.
Do they scoot out
Yeah.
in front of you?
Wow.
All unguided, you said.
All unguided.
Unguided, yeah. Yeah, if one of these fins don't get out quite right, then that
It goes funny.
rocket,
Yep.
yeah, occasionally you'll see one go, whoa.
Wow.
This one has some nose art. Dennis Jimenez, did yours have nose art? Your particular one that had your name on it?
No, but on this gear door here, I have the door is not down, but on there, I had a daughter by the name of Debbie, and I had it painted Debbie's Delight.
Cool.
Do you ever know what happened to that particular tailplane at end of Davis Moffin? Or
No, I have no idea.
Well, you were telling us that your plane was they were using it for
All too often, generally, 50% of your birds were not combat ready for one reason or another. My 929 was down for a part, needed a part. Well, at that time, this other bird needed a part. And mine had that. So they take it out of mine. And my bird was down for a month because they scavenged mine for this one.
Waiting for the
Finally
part.
got all the parts in and I could fly mine again.
But you said certain people got to fly the
Colonel's bird.
Colonel's bird.
Yeah, the colonel's bird had this big yellow stripe down the side there. And only they'd only let some people fly it, other than the colonel. But I was authorized to fly it.
Wow.
Well, you don't want to scratch that sucker.
No.
Don't scratch the Colonel's bird.
And just so you know, this is the one
Yeah, this one. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Now it's much smaller than the 86.
Yes, I see it.
And much lighter.
Well, weren't you saying that when the General and Jaeger were flying, that he took off so much
Yeah,
faster?
okay. We had that 10-mile runway, or
Yep.
10,000 feet.
Yep.
The General was flying the 86, and Jaeger was flying this one. And he'd have to have a start, or the reverse. The 86 needed to start because this thing would accelerate so much faster.
What was it that you were saying was the difference? This thing was more maneuverable?
Oh,
But-
yeah, well, it's lighter.
Yeah.
And
But
therefore, yeah.
what did the 86 have the advantage of? What was that when it compared to this? Remember?
I did know, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I know he ground his tires and brakes way down when he landed downwind,
Yeah.
and they put the T-33 tires on
Oh,
this thing.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. And they had to change the radio equipment to work for us.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, but everything is in Russian in the arm.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, that did.
Yeah. I remember him.
Yeah. Yes, Ken No.
Does that look familiar?
Yeah. Although when he was by us, his hair was combed.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
About how tall was he? You remember?
Oh, he was a fairly short. He was less than you or I. Yeah, he was. Yeah.
This kind of had the makings of a delta wing almost there.
Right. Yep.
But I see there are no kick steps to get in there. He either had to jump on the wing and crawl across.
Right.
No, I did one dumb thing one time. We had 84s, and I landed at the Navy base in Washington, Oak Harbor. And of course, the Navy ran out of fuel up there, so I had to land at the Navy. And here I'm carrying my chute and stuff, and I'm going to jump on the wing because I didn't have a ladder.
Sure.
Jump on the wing to get in there. I didn't jump far enough, and I ended up back in my butt. Rather embarrassing.